Mr. Vice President, thanks for joining us on CBN News.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Here we are at the site of a rocket attack on October 11th, just 4 days after October 7th. Just one of the signs of what's been happening. You've met with families. You've seen some of the devastation. What are your impressions?
I came to Israel to say to the people of our most cherished ally, the American people are with you. I know that tens of millions of Americans are praying for the people of Israel every day. But I must tell you that being here and walking the streets and walking through a kibbutz that was the site of some of the most unspeakable violence on October the 7th has only steeled my determination to be a voice for American support for Israel. These are dire hours for Israel. I think it's so important that the United States make it clear that we're with Israel today, we will be with Israel tomorrow, and we'll be with Israel every day until the threat of Hamas terrorism from Gaza is eliminated once and for all.
You've met with some of the families today as well. What was your feelings, impressions, meeting with them?
I must tell you that I've been to war zones during my time as Vice President and during my time as a member of Congress. But the sites that I saw today, the aftermath of that terrorist attack on October 7th, and even a site like this, the ongoing war on Israel by Hamas, it just was pure evil. I mean, to walk through a kibbutz where literally thousands of Hamas terrorists went from house to house with the simple objective of brutally murdering people, and to have a better understanding as well that what occurred on October the 7th was not a breach of the border fence between Gaza and Israel. It was an invasion. Literally nearly 100 different incursions with thousands of Hamas troops that rolled into communities that while the police fought bravely and held the line and prevented the Hamas terrorists from making their way to Jerusalem or to Tel Aviv. This was a broad-based military operation. And again, I leave here more determined than ever to share with people across the country that not only should America always stand with Israel, but in this moment, we must recognize Israel has no choice but that to eliminate the terrorist threat from Hamas.
That's one of the goals that Prime Minister Netanyahu had said. He had 3 goals: eliminate Hamas, return the hostages, and create a safe zone for people to go back to their villages. Would you share those goals?
I fully support the goals Prime Minister Netanyahu has expressed, and it saddens me to think of the way these communities remain largely empty to this day. Even though the military has taken the fight to the enemy in Gaza and security has largely been restored. Families are not yet returning to places like Sderot and to the kibbutz communities that were impacted. And so I think having people come home and be confident will all require eliminating Hamas. But I must also tell you, talking to hostage families today, assuring them of our prayers, and I know the prayers of people all across America, was deeply moving to me, to speak to the families of young people who are still held hostage, whose fate they don't know at this very hour, but to see their enduring hope that they will someday be united with their family members. It just tells me that we need to continue to send a clear call that we stand with Israel, and also I believe the United States needs to make it clear to other actors in the region, whether it be Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north, or most especially to the mullahs in Tehran, that the United States will be here for Israel, and that we will be prepared if there's an effort to widen this conflict in any way, or otherwise turn 3 months of holding hostages into many months longer, that there'll be repercussions for that, not just for Hamas, but for their patrons across the region.
The Biden administration is trying to actually limit maybe some of the fighting going on in Gaza. However, a majority of Israelis and Israeli families and soldiers want to continue the fight. How would you respond to some of the limits that the Biden administration is trying to put on Israel?
I just don't accept it. I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, and America did what we believed needed to be done, taking the fight to the enemy in Afghanistan. I remember the way our allies stood with us, and they didn't question how we were going about bringing those to justice that had attacked our country. They just stood with us. And I think Israel deserves the same now. Look, we had a ceasefire on October 6th. It ended on October 7th, when 3,000 Hamas terrorists crossed the border with this express purpose of killing Jewish people here in Israel. And I think from this point forward, we need our leaders and we need everyday Americans to resist the temptation of being drawn into that traditional pattern in world public opinion that ultimately always finds a way to blame Israel. And we need to recognize that this is a moment where the very survival of the Jewish state of Israel is at risk, and making sure that not only Hamas, but other actors that threaten Israel in the region understand that America will always stand with our most cherished ally.
A lot of people right now are talking about the day after, and the Biden administration is talking about a revitalized Palestinian Authority that would take over in Gaza. Your thoughts?
I think we're still waiting for the Palestinian Authority to condemn what happened on October the 7th. Look, I think those considerations will be proper for the government of Israel to make, and I think we should leave those to the elected leadership here in Israel, and we'll support their determination. But I was in the Congress when we saw the decision made during the Bush administration to turn Gaza over to the Palestinian population. I remember then seeing synagogues being bulldozed in Gaza. There was essentially an effort to remove the Jewish community from Gaza. And as a younger member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I remember, along with others, expressing deep concern about the notion that one could have a democracy in a place where ruthless terrorists like Hamas were present. And sadly, what I saw the aftermath of today is evidence of the failure, not just of those decisions, but also the failure of the Palestinian leadership to step up and seize an opportunity to create prosperity and security for their own people in Gaza. So I think it'll be important that decisions are made with an eye toward security and the prosperity. As the Bible says, I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I pray for the peace of Israel, for all the people who dwell here. But that'll all begin once the terrorist threat is eliminated from Gaza once and for all.
Yeah. After October 7th, were you surprised by the level of hatred towards the Jews and the rise of global anti-Semitism around the world?
Anti-Semitism has always been a focus of mine. I co-founded the first anti-Semitism caucus in the Congress of the United States with the only Holocaust survivor ever to be elected to Congress, the late Tom Lantos. It's an issue that we saw violence at synagogues during our administration. It's one that's been a great concern to me. But I must tell you, to literally see people on the streets of college campuses in major cities rallying for what Hamas did, and in some way defending it or denying it, and speaking the most vile forms of anti-Semitism and antipathy toward the Jewish state of Israel is deeply troubling to me. I think it needs to be denounced in the strongest possible terms. We need to call it what it is. But I must also tell you, in the midst of that, while we've seen demonstrations on campuses and at major cities across our country and around the world, I've also been deeply moved at the outpouring of support for Israel across America and across the world. The tens of thousands that gathered on the National Mall to express support for Israel, the way that leaders here in Israel have told me that they've been moved by sometimes uncertain allies on the world stage coming to Israel's side and standing by her in this dark hour. So I've been shocked by some instances of anti-Semitism, and particularly the expressions of antipathy toward Israel that we've seen. But I've been so heartened to see the way people across America and in many of our allies around the world have come to Israel's side.
You gave a speech a few years ago at the Knesset talking about your Christian Zionism. What do you mean by that, and how can people pray for Israel right now?
Well, I'm someone who like most Americans throughout our history has cherished the notion of the Jewish people returning to their homeland. Literally, you can look at the American founding and see a Zionist movement where preachers and pastors were calling for the return of the Jewish people to their homeland. And in 1948 it happened, and America became the first nation on earth to recognize Israel. And I believe we've been her greatest ally ever since. And so for me, it springs from a common foundation of Judeo-Christian faith. But it also springs out of the promises of the Bible that I think, like most Christians, I believe that those who bless her will be blessed, those who curse her will be cursed. And it's absolutely imperative that we continue to stand with Israel, particularly in the dark days through which they're passing now. But beyond all of that, as I said in that speech, we stand with Israel because her cause is our cause, her values are our values, and her fight is our fight. And I really believe that this is a moment where that relationship has been more important than ever before. And I just thought it was important for me to come here as a former vice president, but also just as an everyday American of faith, to look the people of Israel in the eye and say, we're with you, we'll stand with you, we'll be with you until the peace and security is restored. And I believe Israel and America will be blessed for that.
Yeah. Mr. Vice President, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming to Israel.
Yeah. Good to be with you.
Thank you.